Ryan, this time of year going into bowl play, much is made of motivation and trying to forecast what team is going to show up because of the incentive to play. Are you a overachieving team that maybe had a sub 500 record last year and is just happy to be somewhere warm for the postseason and playing in a bowl game, or is it the reverse? And you would think for Ohio State in particular, because the talk was very heavy concerning the college football playoff, but to a certain extent, the same could be said of USC. They had similar credentials, although the talk didn't center necessarily around USC. There was still a glimmer of hope to possibly catch somebody in regards to a faction of that 13-member committee and push themselves into the playoffs and maybe get some chaos on that final weekend as well. But just your thoughts about what you're hearing and your general vibe of how Clay Helton's going to approach this to get his team up for this game.
Yeah, I think winning the Pac-12 for USC was very important. So I think that's kind of their reward. That really was the goal all year. They put a lot into that, trying to make sure that they could win the conference. So I think the motivation factor should be okay. It's interesting that the second year in a row that they're playing the playoff snub in the New Year's Six Bowl. Because last year Penn State was the team that was the last one out. It came down apparently to Penn State and Washington. Washington gets in, USC gets Penn State, who it was a heck of a game over there in the Rose Bowl. And now Ohio State was the team that I thought they would be the one to get in. So 2 years in a row. So I think at least Clay Helton knows, like, hey, we know what it's like to play this team that really thought they were going to be in the playoffs. We saw Penn State come out, and I don't think there was any motivation issues with Penn State. I don't think there will be any with Ohio State either. So it's one of those games that the kind of matchup, the marquee matchup, being in a classic game like the Cotton Bowl, I don't think there's going to be a motivating factor on either side. But it is interesting. 2 years in a row, USC kind of gets stuck with the team that got left out of the playoff.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good point with Penn State and Ohio State the past 2 years taking on USC, and hopefully we get a similar, not necessarily result depending on your side, but an entertaining game of the likes of the 2017 Rose Bowl that went down to the wire 52-49. I never understood the motivation argument in regards to, if you look at most of the teams that reach postseason play, 90-some% of them had no chance to win a national championship. Even the majority of them about mid-season on had no chance of winning a conference championship. I know that we're not speaking of Ohio State and USC, but I would think as a head coach, one motivating factor would be, think about this. Until USC played in the Pac-12 championship game, they didn't have all eyes on them. For as big a program, all the prestige, all the attention, there are a zillion college football games going on every Saturday. And even if you're playing a primetime ABC game, let's say, you still have like 4 or 5 other games you're competing with. There are always games on, and the audience is fractured. But when you're in a bowl game, and especially this caliber bowl game, everybody's watching. Don't you want to impress the nation when you're on the big stage, regardless of what it means? And again, for the majority of those teams that didn't even play for a conference championship the last 3 or 4 games of the season, they weren't playing for so much of anything except for maybe going 8-4 instead of 7-5. And suddenly they're on a big stage and playing in a bowl game. And they know that anybody who wants to watch college football right then and there has to watch them. And they have more eyes on them at any point in the season. I would think that would be some level of motivation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think most of the teams that make bowl games, that's like the crescendo to the season. Everyone wants to, play in the bowl game. We have seen occasions, though. I think it might have been the kick six year, like where Alabama played like Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl and just didn't even like show up. Like we've seen that happen, and I think that's part of the we love college football, but part of the unfortunate part of this sport is that you do play everything all the whole season, and you take like a month off, and then you play again. And sometimes you just see teams that they don't even look like the same team. You're wondering, like, you take a month off from whatever you're doing. It's not like the momentum carries through. Some teams are really hot at the end, and then a month later, for whatever reason, they don't play all that well. So I think you're right. I think motivation factor, most teams are going to still be motivated for it. We've seen like USC a few years ago when they went to the Sun Bowl, they just didn't even want to be there. If a team doesn't want to be there, I could see that happening. But for the most part, I think teams, do want to be there. They do want to kind of show up because, like you said, all eyes are on them.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, recent history with Penn State, they showed up. They didn't get the win, but entertaining game and right down to the wire. And then 2 years ago, an Ohio State team that was supposed to get to the playoff, preseason #1, ran the table for most of the season, lost in the last play of the game to Michigan State. Uh, could have been unmotivated for a Notre Dame team in the Fiesta Bowl, but they went out there and routed the Irish. So maybe the teams have a little bit more pride than we give them credit for. USC, Ohio State Cotton Bowl. I'm looking forward to this one. Ryan, before we get down to the big nuts and bolts, maybe we save that for another time, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's kind of start breaking the game down. People are asking, like, what's your prediction? I'm like, I don't know yet. Like, you got to look at some stuff. But I do think there's some similarities. Both teams have a lot of talent. Sometimes they play well. Sometimes they don't play well. It's just you're not really sure. That might be why Ohio State didn't get in. I mean, they had a couple kind of clunker games. USC had the same sort of thing. So, it's a team that when they play to their best, both teams can really be exceptional, but they don't always play to their best.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, and I would expect both teams to show up in fine fashion. Urban Meyer, based on his track record, Clay Helton, shorter track record, just taking over in a bowl game. Let's see, at the end of 2016 or 2015, matching up against Wisconsin. Let's see in the Holiday Bowl, and then coming back with that great stretch drive and winning the Rose Bowl last year. So nothing wrong with Clay Helton's postseason history here just recently with the Trojans in the Rose Bowl. Ryan Abraham, you can join him on uscfootball.com. Please just check it out. If you love college football like I do, even if USC is not your team, you got to look at the coverage right there as the Trojans prep for the Buckeyes. Ryan, we appreciate the time.
Hey, anytime. Thanks so much for having me on. Great talking college football.